A very good evening to all our dear viewers, and welcome to this talk conducted by Global Education and Training Institute. In this talk series, we have with us a very eminent and prominent speaker who has very graciously accepted to deliver his live session speech today. Mr. Ajay Gidh, please join me in welcoming him, who also happens to be the advisor and trust president, multiple institute, and he is joining today all the way from Mumbai, Maharashtra. Mr. Ajay Gidh comes with almost more than 35 years of experience in information and technology, focusing towards payments, financial service, and telecom domain. He comes with a rich experience in successfully leading diversified professional teams, projects across Asia, Africa, America, and European continent. He has precisely worked with global organizations like HCL America in USA, UK, FIS, NCR, and ATOS worldwide in payments and financial inclusion domains. He is currently holding position as managing trustee and president to drive education inclusion, digitization for various schools, foundations, and educational institutes. Having focused on payments and financial domain, he recently worked on financial inclusion projects by implementing new universal small finance and payment banks apart from digitization for public and private banks and non-banking customers. His strengths are strategic program planner and end-to-end complex program executor in capacity as project management officer. Over to you, Mr. Gee, for the talk today.
Okay, thank you so much, Sumita, for a nice and wonderful introduction. Just to highlight, this is my second consecutive presentation on inclusion topic with GETI, and I'm delighted that I would like to share my thoughts, my experience since I delivered my first presentation. So my first slide obviously talks about the inclusion education session 2. The topics which I'll be covering today are the first is recap about the inclusion education and our findings since last couple of years, because we have been working on the initiative since last 2 or 3 years. So I would like to share my thoughts, my findings, and who's eligible for the inclusive education. I would like to share that. Then the inclusive education characteristics, that I will share. Types of inclusive education, that also we will talk about. Then some of the ground issue what we have seen, because we are talking with the various schools, various principals, various trustees, and we have found that there are a lot of issues with respect to the inclusive education. So we'll talk about that. Then typically how the inclusion education classroom should look like, because we have done some implementation recently and we would like to share our experience. And obviously, what should be the action plan? What steps you should take as a school, as a education institute to execute that. So that we will discuss about. And finally, we will talk about some conclusion and thoughts about how the education inclusion should be driven by the various components. So moving to the next slide, what is inclusive education? I think everybody knows that, regardless of any challenges student may have, they should be placed in the appropriate general education classes, which is closer to their neighboring, which is closer to their house, the neighboring schools. So that this definition everybody is aware of, but there are four boxes. You see that first box talks about some of the research what we have conducted, and what we found was uh, the student who are disabled, their achievements are much higher as compared to the normal student in some of the cases, because their focus is completely on the education, not on the other activities what other students might have. The second thing is what we have observed, that the teachers with the more experience and more training, they are more positive and they are more productive when it comes to the inclusion exercise. The third one is normally what we notice that the parents are ashamed or parents are reluctant to go to the schools and share the disability or the limitations what child has. But what we have seen that with the more interaction with the parents, and with the more experience, parents are more adaptive. They want to take the admission in the normal school for the special children's. So that's a key point. The parents has to, they should not be ashamed of sharing what problem their child has. And the fourth one is obviously you need to have the some of the modified instrumental formats and the academic curriculum which should be drawn for all the students. And if we take care of these four components, it is very easy, not very easy, but it is quite you get a very good acceptance with these four components. Moving to the next slide, I think everybody knows that who should be the part of the inclusive education, the eligibility. Obviously, all students. The answer is very simple, but specifically, we should focus on the orphans, child labor, overaged. Some children has emotional and behavioral challenges. They should be focused with disabilities, with learning and difficulties, extreme poverty. The girl child, I think this is extremely important that many of the states, the people are reluctant sending girl child to the school. So I think the more focus should be given to this particular category. The remote areas where they don't have the access to the schools. Some children has got an extreme health condition. They should be focused on, and refugee category and street childrens. I know that it's not going to be very easy, but I'll talk about how to drive this activity in the last slide. Moving to the next slide, what are the characteristics of the inclusive education? Obviously, all students, regardless of their challenges, they should be taught in the same classroom. The need of all the students must be met within the regular classroom. I mean, it is not going to be easy because we need to do some alteration, or we have done some alteration in the normal regular classroom to accept those students, to take care of their specialized needs. So that's important. Then obviously it requires a lot of establishment for the individual student, because he or she will have the different requirement, because every student is different. So inclusive education has to take care of these needs of that particular student. Another thing is the corresponding to their age and their neighborhood school, they should be placed. It should not happen that if the student is staying in X location, he gets admission in the Y location. That's not going to work, because this type of children will have a lot of limitation in terms of traveling, in terms of communicating with the various people and so on. So that's very important that we should take care that they should get the admission in the neighboring schools. Then the education system, they should adapt the particular needs of the learner and not other way around, because the curriculum has to be modified for this type of children's. If we try to enforce the normal curriculum to these students, that's not going to work. That's very important that we need to spend some time in terms of modifying the curriculum. Then obviously the inclusion is aiming. The aim should be to participate in the social and the cultural life, because normally what we are seeing that this type of children, they are not part of the social gatherings or the cultural activities, and the schools has to make sure that they are part of the normal activities like other normal students has. So they should get the opportunity to participate so that they can contribute in the social and the cultural activities. Now, the next slide talks about a type of inclusive education what we have. I mean, typically people are not aware about the various type of inclusive education what we have in some of the schools. Like, see, there are three type of inclusive education we have. One is a mainstream education, which is nothing but with the mainstream method. What happens is the disabled student or the special child has got a special classroom away from the main classroom so that the required focus can be given to that student. If the student is performing well in that particular classroom, then he or she can be promoted to the normal classroom. So here, what happens is this particular type requires a lot of monitoring of each individual student and ensure that they are up to the mark so that they can be shifted to the normal classroom. So this growth is gradual, but what happens in this particular case is students get the education in the mainstream method. Basically they will start with the basics. Gradually, if they are performing well, they can be shifted to the to full inclusion classroom. So this is very important that the parents has to take care. The parents has to, depending on the limitations what child has got, the parents and the schools has to decide whether he should be admitted in the mainstream inclusion or partial or the full inclusion. In the second method, what happens is the partial inclusion, the student is fully involved in the normal classroom, but on the need basis, he spends the time in the separate classroom. I mean, why it is required? Because some students may require a speech therapy lessons, they may require some counseling also. So they have to have the breakout session where apart from the normal classroom, they spend some time in the separate classroom so that they can get a specialized training. And what happens with this is the student obviously tries to gain, or he gets some more comfort, and he gets some more experience with the normal school. At the same time, he gets appropriate training which is required based on his limitations. And obviously the full inclusion where the child with the minor disabilities starts studying in the same classroom where the normal student are studying. And here also what happens is it requires a constant monitoring by the schools, saying that okay, this student is performing well apart from the specialized thing what he is supposed to do, and he works along with the peers. So that monitoring has to be there. There has to be a monthly statistics to be published for the students so that he or she gets fully acquainted with the full inclusion classroom. And though there are see what happens is typically what we have seen is there is no segregation with respect to the mainstream, partial, and the full inclusion in most of the schools, that they try to accommodate the special children in the main classroom, in the full inclusion classroom. And what we notice that the student doesn't perform because obviously there is a lack of confidence from the parent side, there is a lack of confidence of the student. There are no special amenities given to these students, so they obviously lack the progress what they are supposed to have with respect to normal peers. So when we go to the school, we have to take the call whether the student has to be admitted in the mainstream, partial, or the full inclusion. And I think this is very important, and this we have seen in most of the cases that we don't take a practical view and we try to push the student in the full inclusion classroom. Moving to the next slide, so there are certain ground issues what we have seen. Obviously, school and teacher attitude is the biggest problem. Most of the schools, I mean, this statement, most of the school principals or teachers are not going to like it, but that's a fact that if you take the special children to the school doesn't give the admission to this student. This should not be acceptable. This should not be acceptable. They should give the admission to the special children, and this attitude has to change. There is a rigid method and a curriculum there is no special curriculum for the students. Schools are reluctant to modify this curriculum, that this should not be accepted. They should modify the curriculum which for the special children's in accessible environment. I think this is very important. This is right from the school benches, washrooms, and other facility, the content, academic material that is not accessible to the special students. So this has to be taken care by the schools. Many dropouts and repeaters, and the school doesn't bother. If they go, it's better for them. I mean, that's what we have seen, that should not be accepted. if there are any dropouts or the repeaters, school needs to find out why there are so many dropouts, why there are so many repeaters. Teachers, schools are not supported. This is also another issue, that for special children you need a support from the support staff, and most of the cases teachers doesn't get that support. It could be financial support, it could be support from the support staff. So that support has to be given to the teaching teachers. The parents are not involved in the entire process, which should not be the case. Parents should be aware of what my child is doing, so that he and she can discuss with the principal teacher and take the necessary steps. Lack of the teaching aids and equipments in most of the cases, because see this requires a lot of funding from the trust houses, the corporates who gives us CSR donations. So I mean, they have to work. The school has to work with them and try to build the aids and equipments for the special children, and the poor quality of training and the staff to teachers. You know, the training, the adequate trainings are not given to the teachers with respect to special children's, and because of that, the teachers are reluctant to give the support to them, and they fail miserably. So this has to be taken care. The ground issues has to be taken care by the various schools proactively to ensure that they take care of the special children. Now, the most important thing is how the inclusive education classroom look like. Typically, you know that all students learn together. That's a basic thing we should focus on. But at the same time, we have to take care of, as I said, that the partial mainstream and full inclusive, admissions or the methods. But yes, all students learn together. That's a key as far as the inclusion is concerned. The teacher learning expand their skills. Teacher learning must be there, so that teachers are trained to take care of the specialized children. Valuing the other culture and perspective, this is also very important. All these special childrens, obviously they don't get exposure to the various cultures. When they come to the school, they meet various people, various other friends, other students, and they get they doesn't get involved into all these things. So they have to be involved into all these cultures and the cultural activities which school normally conducts. Then obviously, as I said, that giving a teacher's assistant and the support wherever required, so that the teachers feel teacher get the time for teaching, but not to do the other activities. Then connecting with the individual learning style. Here, this is very important. That see, every student is different. What we're seeing is every student is different. Every student has got a different needs. So the connecting with the students, the children should feel connected, that okay, whoever is teaching me, whether it's a support staff, whether it's my teacher, whether it's my school principal, whether it's the school environment, they should feel connected. They should enjoy their stay whenever they are in the school, and then it should be adapted with their individual style. This normally people tend to ignore all these things when they open the inclusion classroom. Then celebrating the diversity by maintaining their individuality. This is also very important, that we know that special children, they obviously can't get adjusted to the normal students. So we have to ensure that by maintaining their individual personality, they have to get involved into various activity there, where they can celebrate. Then the most important point where I put a star, that focus on abilities, not the disabilities. This is very important, that most of the schools, even the parents, they focus on their disabilities and not abilities. And this is very very sad that this situation is there. We have seen this situation in most of the schools. We've seen this situation in most of the households where they have the special children. So that should not be the case. I mean, we should encourage this child with their abilities. What we're seeing is the child, as I said in my first slide, we're seeing that the child with the disability is, their achievements are much much higher, because see, they do a lot of readings. They don't get involved into many other activities like normal student probably can do, like going for the night outs, going for the outings, and so on. So they do a lot of readings through the books, or they might do some readings through the tab, and so on and so forth. So they have a different ability. They are more intelligent in some of the cases as compared to the normal peers what we are seeing. So the very important point is we must focus on their abilities and not the disabilities. Then honoring the needs of all the people equally. I mean, we should not have the differentiation between the special child and the normal child. The culture has to be built in the schools, in the households, in the society, saying that everybody is equal when it comes to the special child, and nurturing the shared and respect for each other. I think this is also a very important point where we are seeing that. I mean, if you go to the abroad and if you see that child or any person coming with a wheelchair, obviously people give the preference to those people rather than giving the preference to other. But that's not the culture in India. So I think we should have that respect to the disabled people or the special childrens, where the priorities are given to those students rather than you know not giving the priority to the students. So these are the some of the principles or the classroom culture what we should have when we go for the inclusion. Moving to the next slide, the some of the action plan. I think what should be the action plan? I mean, most of the schools, they wonder that if I had to go for the inclusion, how should I initiate? And that's the reason I thought this will be meaningful that I should share this slide. This slightly crowded slide, but it's important to understand that what steps we should take when it comes to initiate the inclusive education. First thing is, I think it is important for the schools to establish a team. The team may have the teachers, team may have the support staff, team may have separate classroom, and then you should have the instructional or the planning template. There has to be a proper planning to be done. I mean, if there is no expertise within the school, they should take the help from the external people, do the planning so that they can execute or implement the classroom for the specialized children. So, see, I mean, because of the time constraint, I can't share the template. I mean, if you see the last row in yellow, these are the templates what school needs to prepare. And if GETI invites me next time, I'll probably share the templates along with you, that what that template should have when it comes to the implementation of this inclusion. Then the second thing is instruction and delivery scenarios, that you should have the various scenarios, various benchmark to be set for the students, so that you know that that child is performing good, bad, or poor. So that should be prepared. There are two templates. What we are proposing is physical health and safety practices, and scenario guide, where you have the various benchmarks with the various subjects for special students. Then support for the social and emotional wellness. That support has to be given, to child, so that they are connected to the support staff. The child is connected to the teachers. Child is connected to the classroom and the various other facilities they get. So there has to be staff and student wellness guide which needs to be prepared, which is very important, that students should know that where I'll get access for, and what are the material I'll get. So that needs to be prepared. Then the focus on the effective instructions. Uh, so you need to have the instruction and assessment model guide prepared for them. It should not be the bulky one. It should be in the form of bullets, where the students should get access to that instructions, and he or she can be. It should be in the more of a pictorial form, so that they understand quite effectively, and they do that. They follow that process or the method while they are in school. Then the communication with the shareholder, I think that is very, very important, that the proper communication has to be given to students, families, then the obviously the everybody should be aware of the education process and so on, so that everybody knows that we are on the right track. So there has to be a connectivity approach and scheduling to be done, and what should be communicated, that should be outlined properly, and obviously providing a high quality of professional training to teacher, that is mandatory. I mean, if the support staff or the teachers are not trained properly, obviously the previous five things are not going to work. So I think these are the steps. These are the steps what school needs to take so that they can deliver or they can implement a special child inclusive classroom in the shortest time frame. Moving to the next slide, the conclusion is obviously majority of schools have the inclusive culture. They have the positive attitude. That's what we have seen. But there are many exceptions where the schools, the teacher, the principals doesn't have the accommodative approach. They have very negative attitude towards the special children. So what we are proposing is the some of the there are four areas where people need to push this inclusion. First is education department. They need to implement and monitor the mandatory quota system for the special children. It should be mandatory that if you are the 50 students in the class, at least the four seats, 3 seats, 5 seats, whatever is agreeable, should be restricted to the special children. Then the school needs to show the positive attitude towards the special children, and this culture has to be built. There has to be push from the education department. Then many of the schools get a corporate funding, in form of CSR and the trust. Many trusts give the donations to the schools, and they should insist that it is mandatory fund allocation for the special children. If they don't, if the school doesn't follow that, corporate and trust should stop giving the funding to the schools. So this is very important point, because many of the schools get a lot of aids. They spend that money to various other activities rather than spending it on the special children's. So corporate and trust should make it mandatory that we should spend our funding to the special children's also. Then obviously the parents need to show more openness towards the inclusion. Most of the parents, they doesn't share the disabilities or the special requirement what child has got. I mean, there is nothing to hide. You can't change it. I mean, hiding it is not going to help us. So they have to show the openness, and they should focus, as I said in the previous slide also, the ability of the children and not the disability, to make him, comfortable in the schools. And that was my last slide. And if you have any questions or any of the suggestions or any of the help, you can always write it to me, or you can speak to me, or you can contact GETI. Suvita, I'm done with my presentation. If you have any
Yes,
questions,
thank you so much, sir, for giving an insight to all of us into inclusive education. We do agree to the fact that aim of inclusion is to embrace all people irrespective of race, gender, disability, and it is about giving and access and opportunities, all these making available to people all around in the society. We have a certain questions coming up from our viewers side, which I would like you to address. One,
okay,
Ms. Veena Danwalkar, who is the principal of Chhatrapati Shivaji Vidyalaya Dharavi, has also joined and is viewing us live through this talk. And she would like to know that agreed that all sorts of arrangements, and we really need to cater to different needs of the children for this, if we are really wanting to address the importance of inclusion education. Do we really need to have special teachers appointed for this, or how do we go about it? How do we move ahead with this in a normal setup of a school?
okay. See here, you don't require a normal the specialized teachers. You need to give the training to the specialized training to the normal teachers. I mean, you should choose an experienced teacher who are more accommodative as compared to the new teachers. So the teachers who are already working in your school should be trained in such a fashion that they are able to deliver a required support. At the same time, see, I mean, they should not forget that technology can play a very important angle. So they have to take the help from the external technology people I mean, people like us probably who can help them to set up this special child school for the particular school or for particular school. So that should be the approach. It should be two phase approach. One is training the in-house teachers, the experienced teacher. Second thing is taking the help from the technology people.
So definitely, sir, if we are going to, attend all these queries, as you said, the teachers themselves have to be competent enough and can be accommodating enough to address all these needs in a regular setup. One more query comes from one of the speakers: is what makes inclusion successful, and what are the barriers once we go for it? What are the barriers to inclusive education? And
Okay.
how do we cater to all those barriers?
Okay. I mean, how to make the inclusion successful? I mean, if you see my last slide, as I said, that obviously there has to be some push. The schools are not going to adopt the inclusion proactively. That's what we are seeing. That's the reality on the ground. That's the reason the schools, the education department, the corporates, trustees who give the donation to the schools, and obviously the parents, they need to push. As I said, that the education department should enforce the quota, schools should change their attitude, corporates and trustee should not give the donation if the funding is not allocated to the special children and the special seats. And obviously the parents should be more open and they should not hide the limitations what their child has got. That these are the points which will make the inclusion successful. And the barriers are obviously their curriculum needs to be modified, teacher needs to be trained properly, the funding has to be there from the various sources because this will require some funding in terms of implementing, and the attitude has to be changed of the teacher, principals, and the schools. So these are the barriers. So I think both these points I covered in my presentation. But if anybody has got any special, or if they need a
Yeah,
more
I'm
detailed,
I'm pretty sure, sir, that has been addressed to the satisfaction of the viewers, and we all know, dear viewers, that it fosters the inclusive education. If we follow, it fosters a culture of respect and belonging. It also provides the opportunity to learn and accept individual differences. It
yeah,
provides all children with opportunities to develop friendship with one another. And
absolutely,
friendship further provides role models and opportunities for growth. And if you all do agree with us, then we all invite you to join hands with Global Education and Training Institute for this disruptive education movement that we have carried under the leadership of Dr. Sunita Gandhi, the founder and director of GETI. And we are very absolutely privileged to have with us Mr. Ajay Gidh, who gave this most valuable and informative session today, and the talk which was conducted on such an important issue. So, thank you very much, Mr. Ajay. And for more such talks, we would really wish all our dear viewers to join us on the same link that has been given to you. And we'll be definitely back with you for more important talks on more important issues. Thank you.
okay.
Till then, it's bye bye
Thank you,
from all of us.
Samita. Thank you, Betty, and thanks all the viewers.
Thank you so much, sir.
Bye.